A very good evening to one and all present here. Myself, Dr. Payal Charanya, working as an assistant professor at Sri Udhavam Physiotherapy College, warmly welcomes you all. Today, we are having one more wonderful webinar on the LBP and ergonomics. Today, our resource speaker is Dr. Neha Vaidya. She had completed her BPT from the Sumandi Vidyapeeth and her master's in musculoskeletal science from the Ahmedabad Institute of Medical Science. She had also worked as clinical therapist for 1 year at National Health Ahmedabad and 1 year at PP Savani Institute. Now presently she is working as an assistant professor at Sri Udhavam Physiotherapy College. As a person, she is very calm, cool, enthusiastic to learn new things and always ready to help everyone and share her knowledge. Now I request Dr. Neha ma'am to please start her webinar.
Thank you so much, Payal ma'am. Also, I would like to thank VN Patel Medical Campus for our management, Prakash sir, our principal sir, Mehul sir, to giving me this platform and opportunity to explore myself. I would also like to thank my colleague for encouragement and my students for always love and constant support. Now, let's begin with the today's session. Okay, so low back pain and ergonomics. So we'll start with the low back pain. What is low back pain? It is most common condition that you will feel after somewhat more movement or activity or prolonged period of time of the movement. It is most commonly reported musculoskeletal problem and is the major burden on individual's health system and social care system with the indirect cost of being predominant. And how we can define this is low back pain only. Low back pain is the pain referred to the pain or stiffness in muscle localized below the costal margin and above the inferior gluteal folds with or without leg pain, and is defined as chronic if it persists more than 12 weeks or more, and it leads to disability, poor service, low quality of life, sickness and absences in the working place. Now, incidence. What is the incidence of low back pain? WHO recognized low back pain as one of the most important ergonomic stressors. It is about 60 to 80% of people experience low back pain in their lifetime, and up to 50% of working age people admit to low back pain during first year of 1 year, in the 1 year. And low back pain reoccurs, and the rate of the recurrence is 5 to 10%. And in India, the prevalence of low back pain is around 42%. And majority of women suffer from the low back pain, and the prevalence rate is 60.9%. Now, coming back to the brief biomechanics, what the structures included in the lumbar region. There are 5 lumbar vertebrae which forms joints. There are facet joint, pair facet joints, intervertebral joints. There are many ligaments, ligamentous structures present around the vertebra, and which are responsible mainly for the it is complex ligament system, and which provides critical component of its mobility and stability characteristics. And now ligaments, which are the most common or important ligament which prevent as a restrainer. There are anterior longitudinal ligament, posterior longitudinal ligament, intertransverse ligament, ligamentum flavum, interspinous ligament, supraspinous ligament. Ligaments mainly divided into extrasegmental and segmental, extrasegmental and regional ligaments. So which are all covered under extrasegmental ligaments, that are anterior longitudinal ligament, posterior longitudinal ligament and supraspinatal. And segmental ligaments are ligamentum flavum, interspinous, intertransverse. And regional is iliolumbar ligament, and their main function is to provide restraint for the motion. Excessive motion will be restrained by this ligament. Mainly anterior longitudinal ligament will restrain for extension, posterior longitudinal ligament, intertransverse ligament, interspinous ligament, and ligamentum flavum will restrain for flexion. Now coming towards the muscle. There are many muscles and which plays more important role for the stability purpose, stability of the spine. And we all know that stability, more stability will give more mobility or proper mobility to the distal extremity. There are paraspinal muscle in the posterior aspect of the spine. In that paraspinal muscles, there are two major group of the lumbar extensors that are erector spinae muscle and local muscles. Local muscles which include rotators, intertransversi, multifidi muscles. And in erector spinae, in the lumbar region, they have longissimus and iliocostalis muscle. And the small muscles, rotator muscle of the lumbar spine, are seen crossing the joints of the lumbar region. And the oblique muscles transmit a force along their fiber length and then redirect the force along the rectus abdominis. And mainly we can divide this muscle into local muscles, global muscles. Local muscles are postural muscles, and this includes multifidus, psoas major, quadratus lumborum, transverse abdominis, diaphragm, iliocostalis, and longissimus lumbar part. Then internal oblique or in the lumbar part. And global muscles that are dynamic muscles, which include rectus abdominis, external oblique, internal oblique, and iliocostalis of thoracic part. Now, longissimus thoracic, parathoracic have large extensor momentum as they cross the lumbar joint. And multifidus muscle consists of multiple bundles or fasciculi. As we can see here in this figure, multifidus consists of multiple bundles and that lie almost parallel to the lumbar spine, each bundle spanning no more than few lumbar motion segments that are crossing 1 to 2 lumbar vertebra, and the line of action leads to be parallel to the compressive axis on, or in some cases runs anterior and caudal in the oblique direction. Now another muscles which are important for the back, that are quadratus lumborum and psoas major muscle. McGill believes that quadratus lumborum is major stabilizer of the spine, typically working as isometrically. And in support that, myoelectric evidence suggests that the psoas major acts primarily to flex the hip, and that is its activation is minimally linked with the spinal demands. And the quadratus lumborum appears to be involved with stabilization of the lumbar spine with other muscles, and suggesting clinical focus on the quadratus lumborum is warranted. Now, towards the lumbodorsal fascia, it provides critical support to the spine during the lumbar flexion and lifting activities. When we do lifting activities, this is the most crucial component of the spine, which supports other muscle for the lifting and lumbar flexion. It provides a link between lower limb and upper limb, and anatomically consists of three layers: the anterior, middle, and the posterior layer. And the anterior and the middle layer arises from the transverse process of the lumbar vertebra and joins together laterally, encompassing the quadratus lumborum while blending with the fascia of transverse abdominis and internal oblique abdominis muscle. And this creates a direct connection between the bony spine and the deep abdominal muscle, and appears to be the important relationship for the dynamic stability of the spine. And the posterior layer of the thoracolumbar fascia or lumbodorsal fascia arises from the spinous process of thoracic, lumbar, sacral vertebra, and covers the erector spinae muscle. And laterally, it blends with the latissimus dorsi muscle, and inferiorly, it blends with the gluteus maximus muscle, thus forming the direct connection between the proximal humerus, that is to the upper limb, and distal attachment to the latissimus dorsi. Through latissimus dorsi to the humerus, and distal attachment through gluteus maximus to the proximal femur. Now, functional consideration for the lumbodorsal fascia. The lumbodorsal fascia is not a significant active extensor of the spine, but the lumbodorsal fascia is a strong tissue with well-developed lattice of the collagen fiber, and it's suggesting that its function may be that of the nature's abdominal belt. And it appears that the lumbodorsal fascia may provide a form of strapping for the low back musculature. Another group of muscles are diaphragm and pelvic floor muscle, which are included in the core muscles and the responsible for the stability of the back. The diaphragm serves as the roof of the core, and stability is imparted to the lumbar spine by the contraction of the diaphragm and increasing the abdominal, intra-abdominal pressure. Now, coming to the spinal stability. As we all know, stability is provided by many factors, and mostly the co-contraction of muscle stiffness give to stability to the spine. Mainly, the stability is provided by the paraspinal muscles, which stiffens and stabilize the vertebra directly. And the abdominal wall muscle stabilizes the spine by its attachment to the rib cage and pelvis, and it prevents the buckling to occur at the spine. Buckling can occur when one or more muscles have an inappropriate amount of the stiffness or inappropriately activated. Now towards the stability system, there are three stability systems working together. First is control system, that is by nervous system, active system, that is by muscle, and passive system, that is by inner structure of the spine, that is by vertebral column. Now first is neural control system, the ability to tell where your body is in space, and your ability to recruit the right muscle at the right time to do what you want to do, that is neural control system, and works intimately with the active system to control the stability and the position of the spine. In those with the low back pain, the contraction of the transverse abdominis is delayed and demonstrating poor motor control, and we need to retrain the muscle contraction to help the patient to control the low back pain and mobility. Now, active system, it comprises of muscles, many layered and overlapping muscles, both anterior and posteriorly. Mainly, there are local stabilizers and global muscles, stabilizers and mobilizers. Local stability muscles are transversus abdominis, multifida and psoas major, which function mainly to segmental stability by controlling neural joint position. It also controls segmental movement with the muscle stiffness. Then it provides continuous activity throughout the movement. Now, global stability muscles are oblique muscles and gluteus medius and spinalis muscle. It generates force to control the range of motion, work eccentrically with the contraction to control the range of motion, and it provides non-continuous activity with activity as direction dependent, and it produces movement with the stability. Now, the global mobilizer muscle. These are rectus abdominis muscle, iliocostalis, and piriformis muscle. And it generates torque to produce large range of movement. And mainly these are working for the dynamic support of the spine. Now, passive system. Passive system mainly constrains the inner structure of the spine. It includes several ligaments at the different location of the spine, intervertebral disc, which maintain the tension of the ligament and restrain the rotation, facet joints which articulates with the vertebral bodies. And its main function is to restrain the excessive mobility. Now, different postural loads on the vertebra. During walking, the compressive load on the lumbar spine is approximately 2.5 of the total body weight. And this graph is showing different position and different exercise which are causing more pressure over the lumbar vertebra. This study and the research is done over the L3 vertebra, and it is showing the highest pressure and the amount of the pressure during the particular position and particular exercise. The graph A is showing different positions held by the patient and the load of the pressure over the L3 vertebra, and graph B is showing different exercises causing pressure over the vertebra, that is over the L3 vertebra. And mainly here we can see the prone lying is showing less amount of the pressure, that is around 25% and 25 Newton, and highest amount is given by the position, that is sitting position, forward stoop position, and reaching out for something, that is around 275 Newton. And in another graph, that is B graph, this is various exercises causing the pressure over the, and various exercises causing pressure over the lumbar vertebra in different position and in different amount. And there is also studies and research has done, and it is suggesting that the sitting position is giving rise to pressure over the lumbar spine, but sitting without support is giving rise to more pressure. Unsupported position give rise to more pressure over the lumbar spine in comparison with the sitting with the support. It is around 700 Newton that pressure is occurring over the lumbar spine during sitting position without support. And when the person sits with the support, it reduces up to 400 Newton. So we have to take care of these positions and exercises during the exercise and exercise planning. Now, coming to the classification of low back pain, it may be, it can be mechanical or mechanical, it can be systemic, it can be from the neurological cause or any psychological cause. First is mechanical or activity related causes. There are many causes which can lead to mechanical low back pain, that is from the soft tissue injury, strain, disc herniation, spinal instability, spondylolisthesis or fracture, spinal canal stenosis, Facet syndromes, degenerative joint disease, spondylosis, segmental and discal degeneration. And the systemic disorder can come from the primary or metastatic from neoplasm, then discal or epidural infection, metabolic bone disease like osteoporosis, or vascular disorders like vasculitis, atherosclerosis. Neurological syndromes can occur from the myelopathy, from the intrinsic or extrinsic process of the lumbosacral flexopathy, or diabetic neuropathy, or inflammatory demyelinating neuropathy, that is from GBS. Then it can occur from the referred pain or psychogenic etiology. Gastrointestinal disorder can also lead to this type of disorder, then abdominal aortic aneurysm, hip pathology, prostatitis, pyelonephritis. Uh, these all can lead to psychogenic pain. Now the terminology, which is confusing, and we generally use this kind of terminology for the uh, introduction of the condition. First is spondylosis. Spondylosis is also known as spondylosis deformans. It is degenerative spine. Spondylitis is inflamed spine. It is example is ankylosing or pyogenic. It can be ankylosing or pyogenic. Spondylolysis is chronic fracture, or you can call it a stress fracture of the pars interarticularis with the non-union. That is pars defect. Then spondylolisthesis, that is anterior slippage of the vertebra, typically resulting from the bilateral pars defects. Now, differentiating point. This is the most important portion, as if the person is having low back pain, it will come with the same symptoms, that is low back pain. But as a physio, we have to differentiate between what is mechanical low back pain. There is paraspinal muscle tenderness or spasm. It can be variable patient to patient. Symptoms exacerbated by the forward flexion, and it will be relieved with the rest. There will be leads to one side because of the muscle spasm and pain. And normal neurological examination and pain will be confined to localized. It will be localized to back region only. Now, herniated disc or prolapsed disc. We all know there are 4 stages of this prolapse, that is degeneration, prolapse, extrusion, and sequestration. It has been widely held that symptoms of the lumbar disc disease are result of the either herniation of the nucleus pulposus through the weak annulus fibrosis, or from the tearing of the annulus itself. Herniation is thought to be the result of defect in annulus fibrosis, and it will lead to reproduction or the exacerbation of the sciatic symptoms with the nerve tension test, that is as SLR test, straight leg raising test, Lessig test, slump test, and bowstring test. A reproduction of the sciatica with flexion of the lumbar spine. When the person assumes a flexion position, it will increase or aggravate the symptom. And reproduction of the sciatica with crossed SLR, that is normal leg raising, is highly specific for the herniated disc. Now, lumbar muscle spasm or LIST away from the involved nerve root. Neurological deficit in the distribution of the involved nerve root. Exacerbation of pain by Valsalva, that is sneezing, coughing, or defecation, will also aggravate the symptoms. An MRI will correlate the side and neurological level noted on the physical examination. Here you can see there is herniated disc posteriorly, and you can compare it with the normal disc and normal vertebral body. Now, another condition, spinal stenosis. Spinal canal stenosis is the condition in which part or the all of the entire spinal canal is stenosed. That is narrowing of the spinal canal. It can be occur from the primary or secondary causes. That is degenerative or acquired causes. Neurogenic claudication is cramping leg and back pain or the numbness increase with the walking, variable distance, and relieved by the forward bending, sitting, or lying, and usually bilateral leg and does not follow the dermatomal pattern. This is the differentiating feature for the stenosis from the radiculopathy. Loss of the normal lumbar lordosis, and hallmark is symptom severity changes with the position, and passive spine extension reproduces leg symptoms. Motor or sensory deficit may be variable, and nerve tension test or sign are usually absent. Radiographic evidence of facet hypertrophy, disc narrowing, intralaminar space narrowing. Then another condition is lumbar spondylolysis. It is defect of pars interarticularis. It can be unilateral or bilateral, and it is best described as stress fracture of the pars interarticularis. Lumbar tenderness at the level of involvement, it can be variable, and it will decrease lumbar lordosis. Repetitive hyperextension injury causes this kind of condition. Then SPECT scan and bone scan is usually done for this kind of condition, and pain will be aggravated by the extension and it will be relieved by the flexion. There may be hamstring tightness with the SLR test and passive range of motion testing, and pain will be exacerbated by the hyperextension of the lumbar spine, that is passive extension, active extension, single leg extension, and may have sign of associated spondylolisthesis. Now, another condition, differentiating condition is lumbar fracture. It can be lead from the trauma, minor or major trauma, osteoporotic patient. There may be tenderness at the level of the injury. There may be localized swelling and hematoma or ecchymosis, and there may be chances of the lower motor neuron deficit, and owing to the injury to the cauda equina or the nerve roots, and there may be chance of the UMN lesion above the level of cauda equina. Another condition is annular tear. Now, it can lead to back pain and greater than the leg pain. There may be localized back pain more. A nerve tension sign present on the examination, but negative radiographic evidence of the nerve impingement. Discography is diagnostic for this kind of condition. Pain will be worsened by the Valsalva maneuver, coughing, leaning, or sitting forward, and CT and myelogram negative for the herniated disc. Another condition is facet joint arthropathy. This term is synonymous with the term degenerative osteoarthritis. Pain on the spine, extension, and ipsilateral side bending is the confirmatory test. Localized unilateral point tenderness posteriorly over the facet joint, and pain well blocked by the facet joint injection of the lidocaine and or the steroid. Another condition is infection, in which there may be pain which can be ruled out with the ESR, WBC count, and may have positive blood culture or the tuberculin test. Radiograph may show vertebral end plate erosion, decrease intervertebral disc height. It may exhibit bone erosion or reactive bone formation. Malignancy also can lead to low back pain. There may be laboratory investigations which will rule out the condition, in which ESR is raised. There may be chance of the anemia. There may be plastic or bony erosion on the radiograph. There may be high or elevated level of PSA or alkaline phosphate. CT scan localizes cortical lesion earlier than the radiograph. MRI for the soft tissue tumor that may be of the spinal cord tumor, and bone scan useful for the early demonstration of the plastic lesion. Now, Corda equina syndrome, it is emergency condition. A person will present with the unable to void or stand. There may be bilateral leg pain, severe back pain. There may be saddle distribution of anesthesia, that is numbness around anus and perineum. There may be widespread or the progressive profound motor or sensory loss in the lower extremity. Loss of the anal sphincter tone, fecal incontinence. Another condition is spondylolisthesis. It may occur with the spondylolysis. There is step sign will be present in this kind of patient, maybe hamstring tightness, reversal of the lumbar lordosis, and sleep will be noted on the lateral radiograph, and bilateral patch defect usually over the L5 S1 side. And it is the anterior displacement of the proximal vertebra over the distal vertebra, and pain will be more intense than the spondylolysis. Another condition is inflammatory spine disorder, mainly occur in the gradual onset before the age of 40, and mark morning stiffness, peripheral joint involvement, and may have iritis, rash, urethral discharge, that is Reiter's syndrome. And another condition is discitis, that is usually occurs in age of 1 to 18 years. Onset is abrupt and with the severe back pain. There may be fever, malaise, and irritability, and elevated amount of the ESR and C-reactive protein. Another differentiating condition is sacroiliac joint dysfunction. SI joint tenderness to the palpation, often a positive Faber test, and lumbosacral pain with radiation to buttocks, groin, or thigh. Often sclerosis or irregularity of the SI joint on the X-ray, and confirmation by the fluoroscopic SI joint injection. Now, the most important aspect of the examination, that to rule out the non-organic low back pain sign. How will you rule out the non-organic low back pain? So first, we will check for the tenderness. By these 5 signs, we will rule out it is from the organic origin or the non-organic origin. So first sign is by the tenderness, by patient reports disproportionate pain to the extremely light touch, or the tenderness that does not correlate with the anatomic structure. Then it is maybe superficial tenderness, and if we apply light touch, patient will show or express with the exacerbation of the symptoms. Then simulation sign, that is axial compression of the head or the rotational simulation maneuver, similar to standing log roll with the no true rotation of the affected area. That will elicit the pain despite of no actual involvement or the provocation taste, that is simulation. Then third one is distraction. For the example, we can use SLR for the sitting position and SLR for the supine position. Patient will show more pain in the both different position. So that was distraction sign. Then regional sensory or motor disturbances. That is the non-anatomical distribution of abnormal sensation, that is like anti-leg pain is reported rather than the anatomic or dermatomal pattern. And overreaction or exaggeration. Patient verbally or physically react in inappropriate manner to the light touch or the gentle examination, that is overreaction to the pain. By this, we can differentiate the actual pathology and non-organic low back pain. Now, coming to the topic, that is ergonomics. So, what is ergonomics? Ergonomics is the science of fitting the job to the worker, matching the physical requirements of the job with the physical capacity of the worker. Good ergonomic design makes the most efficient use of the worker capabilities while ensuring that the job demands to not exceed those capabilities. And ergonomics is used to design an environment that is layout, work method, equipment, noise, which is compatible with the each individual's physical and behavioral characteristics. And ergonomic hazards are prevented primarily by the effective design of job or job site and the tools or the equipments used in that particular job. Now, ergonomic focus. So, we have to focus over these three aspects. That first is tool, second is the task, and third is the environment or the workstation, which will highly influence the operator or the user. When focusing on the tool, the task, and the environment, you are trying to find the best combination for the worker. If the right combination is not achieved, then the ergonomic problems may arise when the workstation, equipment, tools, or environment do not fit the worker well. And these traits can cause immediate or long-term damage to the muscle, nerves, tendons, and joints. And most of these ergonomic problems or injuries are caused specifically by the forceful or repetitive motion activities, or because workers must assume awkward positions because the workplace do not fit the employee. So we have to focus over these three aspects. Now, benefits of the ergonomics. It decreases the risk of injury, it increases the productivity, it decreases the mistake and rework, it increases the efficiency of the worker, it decreases the lost workplace of the employee, and it will improve the moral. Now, what leads to the musculoskeletal problem? First is awkward postures. Hand above the head, elbows above the shoulder, back bend forward more than 30 degrees, neck bend more than 30 degrees, squatting position, kneeling position. This all position, if you assume more than 2 hours a day, it will definitely lead to musculoskeletal problem in the later of the life. Heavy and frequent awkward lifting, repetitive movement of the lifting load, then we should avoid this kind of positions. Like in corporate workers who are dealing with the computers or laptop, they should avoid this kind of posture, like sitting without back support, looking down at the papers, laying flat on the desk. Then to reach for the mouse over the table, then avoid resting on the sharp edges, and take frequent rest pauses when using the mouse or keyboard. So these all postures should be avoided. How can we modify this for to prevent the low back pain? So starting with the lifting. Correct lifting technique, if we use, we can prevent the musculoskeletal problems. How can we lift properly or technically? So stand close to the load, have a firm footing and wide stance, attenuate the lordosis, bend your knees to go down to the load and keep your back straight. Get a secure grip and hold the load as close as possible, and lean back to stay in balance, and lift the load by straightening the knees, and take a steady lift, do not jerk. So this way we can use, this is a proper technique to use a load from the ground. And always go with the mantra, like don't pull, always push. Lifting a heavy object, in lifting of heavy object, always try to push the load, not to pull the load. Then we can use ergonomic chair to modify our workstation. Here you can see two chairs. First, both of the chair are ergonomically designed, but one of which is not properly ergonomically designed. The chair on your left is not properly ergonomically designed, as there is a not proper armrest. And ergonomical chair should be designed with the adjustable back height. It should have armrest and proper width of the seat. Now, with the posture orientation to the work. By proper posture, we can maintain or we can prevent the musculoskeletal problems. A simple solution to awkward posture is bringing the mouse down to the same level as the keyboard and making the elbow to 90 to 105 degree of flexion. And whenever possible, unload your upper extremity. With the by choosing proper seating arrangement, like having proper chair or ergonomically designed chair in which the arm should be raising over the armrest and foot should be at the hip and knee should be at the 90 degree with the feet flat over the ground or supported over the footrest. And the screen of the computer or the laptop should be one arm distance away, and the screen should be at the eyesight level. It should be slightly lower down to the eyesight, or it should be at the eye level. This is how you have to manage your posture with while working on the computer. So starting with the head should be up, straight up, shoulder should be relaxed, back should be erect and supported properly. Then only moderate pressure at the front of the seat cushion. Then feet should be firmly placed over the ground or over the footrest. And reference material is easy to look at. It should be at the eyesight level and hand in the line with the forearm. And I should be looking forward to the screen. And monitor should be approximately at the eye height level and it should be one arm distance away. Now, by the model computer workstation. So we can modify this way also the workstation with the keyboard trays, with the wrist support, split natural keyboards to facilitate the neutral wrist angle. Then we can use a fully adjustable ergonomic chair, and we can use document holder to minimize head and eye and neck movements. We can use at the side of the just side to the screen. Now I would like to show one video to you. Uh, as you can implement now at your home during this lockdown phase and work from home condition. This is how you can manage your posture sitting at your home, sitting over a chair or sofa. When using a dining table or the table and chair, you can modify this way. For the laptop, if you are working with the laptop, you can modify your workplace this way. So maintaining the elbow angle that is around 90 degree, then chair height, then eye level. Screen should be at the either at the eye level or just below to the eye level. Keyboard for the maintaining of your elbow angle. Same way you can modify for the children also by increasing your height or the chair height, maintaining all the angles, that is hip and knee angle. It should be 90 degree, foot should be supported or the rested over the foot rest, and elbow angle should be maintained. And with the amount of 30 minutes of working, you can have 30 minutes of stretching or free movement or free time. Now, preventing injury, and what does the patient needs to know? That either too much loading or too little is detrimental. Do not do too much of any one thing. Avoid repeated or prolonged and range lumbar motion. Design work to vary position so that the loads are rotated among the various supporting tissues to minimize the risk of accumulated tissue deformation. Then allow the time for tissue to restore. Use the frequent rest breaks in between the work, prolong work. Then don't sit too long. Don't sit for too long of time. Then keep a load close to your back while lifting. These many advice we can give to the patient for prevention of the recurrence of the musculoskeletal condition. Now, with the ergonomics modification, what are the physiotherapeutic approaches? This includes kinesthetic training, McKinsey approach, Williams flexion exercise, lumbar stabilization program, mobility and flexibility training, then cognitive behavioral therapy, cardiopulmonary endurance, functional activity, and ergonomy. Now, first is non-weight bearing bias, that is traction approach. Patient does not tolerate being upright or basic for basic ADLs that patient cannot tolerate weight bearing position. We can go with this non-weight bearing positioning, and we can use traction to relieve the symptom. Then extension bias. What is extension bias? Mainly, this reduces extension bias in this type of patient. Extension exercise reduces intradiscal pressure and allow the anterior migration of the nucleus pulposus away from the area of the pathological compression, and symptoms decreases with repetitive extension motion, and pain centralized with the extension. Now, what is flexion bias? Flexion bias is most commonly used in the patient with posterior spine element, that is of facet joint pain. And in this patient, symptoms decrease with the repetitive flexion on motion pattern testing, and pain is centralized with the flexion. And flexion exercise may act to reduce facet joint compression and provide stretching to the lumbar musculature, ligament, and myofascial structure. And in cardiovascular exercise in patients with posterior spine element pain, this kind of pain or flexion bias uh, maybe initiate with the stationary bicycle in the slight lumbar flexion, or aquatic stabilization exercise in the slight lumbar flexion position. Now, we can use a McKinsey approach for the assessment, and these many postures we can sequentially ask the patient to perform to diagnose the which movement or which bias patient is having. And with different position, when the tests are done with the patient in standing and recumbent, first we should start with the flexion, then go into the extension. So we can start with the A, then B, we can progress to the C, then we can progress to the both leg bending, that is D, then lateral list or shift. Then we can progress with this G type of movement, that is flexion rotation movement of the spine in the supine position. When end range flexion extension testing reveals no centralizing direction, testing progress to include bilateral side gliding performed with the patient standing and recumbent and supine position. And once the proper end range direction of the beneficial movement is identified, the clinician can then apply passive assist to the test movement and frequently including the end range mobilization. Now, the phenomenon of the centralization and peripheralization. Treatment is based on evaluation of the pain location and maneuver that change the pain location from the referred to the centralized area. And once it is identified, the direction of the exercise and the movement is used for the treatment. That is, bias movement is used for the treatment purpose. And centralization, as McKenzie used the term, it refers to the rapid change in perceived location of pain from distal or the peripheral location to the proximal or central one. Now, the advantage of this program, we can start with the positioning, and we can go with the standing, and then standing exercise in various positions. So advantage of this program is that it gives patient to understand of their condition and responsibility for maintaining proper alignment and function. And once the therapist identifies the movement, that is usually extension or lateral bending, that decreases peripheral symptoms, the patient is taught to perform an individualized exercise program in the direction of the movement. and the movement is performed repetitively to passive range and range movement, and in which should not peripheralize the symptom. Now with flexion exercise, we can use this approach also if the patient is flexion biased. The goal of the isometric flexion regimen uh, is developed and is to mainly widen the intervertebral foramina and the facet joint to reduce nerve compression. It will stretch the hip flexors and the back extensors. It will strengthen the abdominal and gluteal muscle, and it will reduce posterior fixation of the lumbosacral junction. These many exercises we can use for the flexion exercise. Now, the lumbar stabilization program. It is the most important program which should be included in the low back pain rehabilitation. The main goal of the lumbar stabilization program is to build musculature that stabilizes the torso and with co-contraction of abdominal muscle to provide a corseting effect on the lumbar spine. It includes soft tissue, flexibility, mobility, joint mobility, stabilization program. So, soft tissue flexibility, we should include hamstring, quadriceps, iliopsoas, gastrocnemius, and external oblique flexibility training. In joint mobilization or mobility, we should include lumbar spine segmental mobility depending upon patient restriction. We can give mobilization. Then hip range of motion, thoracic segmental mobility. Then in stabilization program, first of all, we should find the neutral position in all the positions like standing, sitting, jumping, and prone lying. With this progression, we can use prone gluteal quizzes with arm raise, with alternate arm raise, with leg raises, with alternate leg raises, with arm and leg raise, and with alternate arm and leg raise. With in this, we can also give patients supine pelvis bracing exercise, then bridging progression, starting with the basic position, then one leg raise with the ankle weight, then stepping, then balance on the gym ball. Then also we can give quadruped position with the alternate arm and leg movement, starting with the basic position and then progressing to the alternating movement of the arm and leg movement. Then kneeling stabilization. We can use double kneeling, single kneeling, lunges with or without weight. Then we can give wall slide for the quadriceps strengthening. Then position transition with the postural control. We can in that we can include abdominal program in which we can use curl up exercise, dead bug, supported and unsupported, then diagonal curls up, then diagonal curls up on the incline board, then straight leg lowering exercise. And we can include gym program also like latissimus dorsi pull down movement, then angle leg press, lunges, hyperextension bench, and general upper body weight exercise. And in aerobic exercise program, we can start with the walking, then we can start with the intensity and the time duration of the walking. We can progress with that, then we can ask the patient to go to swimming if it is feasible for the patient. Then we can ask to stationary cycling, cross country ski machine, then running initially supervised on the treadmill. Now, this is the lumbar stabilization program. We must focus on this. With this, we have to focus over the cognitive behavioral therapy in which we can focus over the patient's thoughts and beliefs and assumption, and we can modify according to patient's beliefs. You can clear the idea about pathology and correct the belief and the myths of the patients by educating, by challenging the irrational beliefs, then relaxation, education and training, then self-monitoring, then cognitive rehearsal, then thought stopping, then communication by communicating, then social skill training. This way we can modify the patient's cognitive thoughts and beliefs of the condition. Then proximal stability for the distal mobility, mainly for the core concept. If a person is having low back pain, we have to focus over the core first. So for the distal mobility, we have to focus over the proximal stability. So in that, starting with the transverse abdominis activation, in which patient has to assume crook lying position and draw in or hollow the abdominal muscle, and instruct the patient to breathe in and breathe out, and then gently draw the belly button towards the spine and to hollow out the abdominal region. And then during that we have to ask the patient to breathe normally. And if the person is having difficulty in performing correct contraction of the transverse abdominis, then pressure biofeedback machine we can use for this beginning for the commencement of this activation. Then multifidus activation and training with the prone lying. Place your palpating digit or thumb or the index finger immediately lateral to the spinous process of the lumbar spine, and palpate each spinal level to compare for the comparison in the activation of multifidus muscle, and can be made between each segment as well as from the side to side. And instruct the patient to drawing in maneuver so that the gentle contraction is felt against the palpating finger. This is how we can activate the muscle. And for the beginners we can give this kind of modification with the activation of muscle, this type of postures we can give for the beginners. For the intermediate patients we can progress to this type of activities like bridging, alternate leg raising, straight leg raising, leg and arm raising, and side lying position. And with the advanced training we can ask the patient to use lunges and single alternate arm and leg raising, then leg raising, and different both leg lowering and side to side clockwise circulatory training rotation exercise. For the progression we can also use the Swiss ball and ask the patient to use the lower limb, both the lower limb, and we can ask for the bridging over the Swiss ball and different positioning as shown in this figure. With the Swiss ball, you can ask for the extension exercise, flexion, bridging, stabilization, and single alternate arm and leg raising activities. So this is how we can go with the training in the advanced stages. Then next is uh, should abdominal belt be worn? It is the question of many patients. They ask us to is if they have to use the abdominal belt or not. So those who have never had the previous back injuries appear to have no additional protective benefit from the wearing a belt. So first time users, no additional protective benefit from the wearing belt. Belt appears to give people the perception that they can lift more and may in fact enable them to lift more weight, and which leads to increased intra-abdominal pressure and blood pressure. And those who have had an injury while wearing a belt appears to risk a more severe injury as they tend to lift the weight with the belt on. So this is advice should be given to the patient. Now, so with the ergonomics, we should take frequent rest breaks between working and give ourselves the type of stretching exercise at the workplace. So you can use this kind of stretching at a place whenever you are sitting or doing a work. You can use 1 to 12 this kind of stretching exercise. So first is just raising your arm in front of your desk or table, and you can hold this position for 2 to 3 seconds and lower it down. Then you can modify this exercise with the stretching more forward and hold that position. Then another is raising your both the hands, clasping and over the head and stretching. Then you can also use the side bending activities for the trunk muscles, lateral trunk muscles in the standing position. Fourth one is also toe raising, toe and hand raising over the head. Then fifth one is shrugging of your shoulder. Sixth one is stretching of the neck muscles, that is by side bending to one side and same time stretching of the same side of hand towards the opposite direction. Then namaste position in the down reverse namaste position. Then alternate shoulder and hand raise. Then over the chair you can also ask the patient to rotate trunk rotation, ask for the trunk rotation in both the direction and hold the hand position for the 3 to 5 seconds and you can ask for the 8 to 10 repetition. Then over the chair, you can also give a lumbar flexion extension movement like slightly slouching position to extension position. And finally, the person mainly working over the keyboard, you can ask for the handshaking movement. So these all are the exercise you can ask your patient to do at the workstation. So this was all about low back pain and ergonomics. Thank you for your attention, and if you have any doubt, you can ask.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful information. It was very great to hear from you, ma'am. Such an interesting topic. Hope the student will definitely understand and keep in mind this concept while treating the patient as well as their in routine their life. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the sharing your knowledge with all of us.
Thank you so much.
Participants, if there is any query, please drop in the chat box. Ma'am, there is the one patience. What are the red flags for the low back pain?
Repetitive movement should be avoided. Heavy lifting should be avoided. Frequent poor postures should be avoided. Mainly, these are the conditions which can lead to musculoskeletal weakness and which will ultimately lead to low back pain.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, there is the one another question. If patient having low back pain as well as knee pain, so how our low back pain management plan?
Same way we can plan for the knee pain and low back pain. We have to see patient as a whole. We cannot focus only over one region and we can spare a single region of it. We have to focus patient as a whole, and according to patient's symptoms and severity of pain, we can change our focus. We can mainly prioritize the symptoms of the patient and the pathology of the patient mainly, but we have to focus both the conditions like low back pain and knee pain at the same time. But we
Okay.
have to mainly we have to take care of the postures which lead to deformity or which can aggravate the symptoms. We have to take care of these postures, but with that we can focus over both the condition at the same time.
Okay. And there is the one another question. Should we consider bilateral sciatica as a red flag?
We can consider, but for that we have to first go through thorough investigations like MRI and X-ray and MRI, and with that we have to mainly focus on the physical examination and exclude all the possibilities that can lead to chances of the main emergent conditions like Corda equina syndrome or any other pathology or instability
Okay, ma'am. How can we prevent or reduce non-specific low back pain?
mainly non-specific is mainly postural related, or there may be weakness or the practice of the poor posture. So by assessing properly, by asking proper occupational hazards, or you can ask for the workplace in which the person is working, the environment in which the person is working, the kind of work which person is working. First that you have to ask for that, and you have to assess that the person is assuming proper posture or not, proper lifting technique or proper ergonomics or not. And by that way, as proper assessing, you can modify the workplace and you can modify for the pain, or you can mainly plan your treatment protocol according to patient's environment.
Patient having extension and flexion both pain are there. So what our diagnosis and how we treat that patient?
Okay, mainly there may be chance of the major central bulge or central pathology, which can lead to both hand range pain. But in that kind of patients, we have to start with the low intensity positioning, and we can progress gradually with the hand range, which cause in both the direction, that is in flexion or extension. First, we have to rule out which position is less paining and in which the position is little bit of bias, and we can start with that positioning, and then we can progress further to the extreme end range positioning in both movements, that is in flexion and extension both. And with that, we can, in which we can also use the strengthening protocol, which will may lead to relieve the pain in the end range movement.
Okay. Ma'am, there is one another question. Cardiopulmonary training are improve the low back pain. What are the exercise include in that?
Mainly in cardiopulmonary, mainly endurance training is for the whole body. It is not specifically to the one region. It will improve the fitness of all the body. But yes, we can use cardiopulmonary training in the low back pain patient, as we have to treat the patient as a whole, and person will go into the workplace and work as a whole. So it will improve the pain, but gradually we can start with that. We can ask for the aerobic training. We can ask the patient for the walking, starting with the walking, and according to patient's overall fitness, we can improve and we can progress to the training.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, other question. What are the prevalence of back pain associated with knee deformity or pain?
What are the, ma'am, sorry?
Yes, ma'am. What are the prevalence of back pain associated with knee deformity or pain?
Mainly, prevalence of low back pain is more with the there is prevalence is more with the knee condition, as the weight bearing area will change, and that will lead to muscle weakness, poor posture. So if the person is having knee deformity, it will ultimately lead to pain, and the prevalence will be high in that kind of condition.
Okay. There is the one another question. What are the precautions we should take in pain due to lumbar puncture?
Okay, lumbar puncture, mainly it is associated with any surgery which will lead to pain. Precautions, it is not something that we have to do for the precaution for this kind of particular condition. But as a whole, there are precautions which we generally use for the low back pain. We have to follow the same for the lumbar puncture.
Okay. There is no more question, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful knowledge
Thank you
shared
so much.
with us. And also thankful all the participants and viewers who are attending this webinar.
Thank you so much, VN Patel Medical Campus, and all the students and participants who are listening to me. Thank you so much.